Struggling to apply economic theory to reality? Fear not, economics education here to help. Let's start with micro, specifically supply and demand and economies of scale. ExxonMobil recently announced plans to increase its supply of oil by a massive 25% by 2025. Despite global warming awareness, the demand for oil globally is rising. This is due to rising incomes and a growth in the world's population. ExxonMobil is planning to meet this demand by increasing supply. An excellent example of how companies predict demand and then make plans to increase supply to meet that extra demand. So how exactly is ExxonMobil attempting to increase its supply? Well, it's doing this through investing $200 billion in capital. Capital, that's the machines and the factories that they get the oil out of the ground and ultimately to the end consumer. The oil industry is an excellent example of how certain industries require really high output in order to get the average total cost low enough to satisfy consumer demand. In the GCSE and A-level specification, you're expected to know technical economies of scale. You can use the oil industry to explain how as output increases, companies like ExxonMobil are able to invest in mass production technologies in order to pull those average total costs down. Our second example is a macro example, and we're going to be talking about hyperinflation and the case of Venezuela. At the moment, Venezuela is experiencing huge levels of hyperinflation. The most recent figures put it at 1.7 million%. That means if you had savings worth $10,000 at the start of the year, by the end of the year, they'd only be worth a tiny 59 cents. The consequences of these astronomically high figures are profound, as many Venezuelans are suffering health effects as even basic medicines are unaffordable. So what are some of the causes of Venezuela's hyperinflation? Well, the government mismanagement of the economy and foreign sanctions have pushed the AS curve to the left. This has resulted in an increase in price and a reduction in GDP. We can see really strong arguments for this case, as over the last 5 years, Venezuela's GDP has fallen by half. Now, for my third example, I firstly want to wish happy birthday to Facebook, who recently turned 15 years old. In the GCSE and A-level spec, you're expected to know examples of markets that are non-competitive, and Facebook provides the perfect example of this. The reason you're on Facebook is because your friends' friends are on Facebook. This leaves Facebook to benefit from something known as the network effect. The network effect is when a good or service is only able to become valuable after it gains a critical mass of users. With 2.2 billion users, Facebook has certainly secured the network effect, and as a result has a very high barrier to entry that allows it to make huge profits. With concerns around fake news and the mental health effects of using Facebook, we could certainly see an exam-style question written around the externalities that perhaps Facebook causes. However, for those sitting the exam in summer 2019, this is very unlikely. So in summary, we've got 3 key examples that you can use in your economics course. Firstly, ExxonMobil, supply meeting demand and economies of scale. Secondly, Venezuela, hyperinflation and shifts in the AS curve. And thirdly, Facebook, the network effect that causes high barriers to entry, leading to a very non-competitive market. I'm here to help GCSE and A-level economics students, so comment below ways in which I can best support you. That's been the news, and I've been Economics Education.